is just more so I can go back and find out what I did wrong and how to make things better. What this presentation about is a method for dodging and burning in Photoshop. In the days of the darkroom, that was one of the main tools we used, is dodging and burning. The ability to add darkness or lightening up just parts of an image, not the whole image. So you could do it with exposure to the whole image, but there's times where you'd want to darken one part and lighten another. That was called dodging and burning. So what I'd like to show today is a way of doing that using layers in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this and start sharing Photoshop. Okay, so we're going to start with this picture of a lady from Tokyo. Now, what I want to achieve is this look right here. I want to darken parts of her and lighten other parts to give her more depth. So how this is done is using new layer, type a name in the layer, dodge and burn in this case. Go to mode. This is very important. Soft light, opacity, type it in, 50%. Fill with soft light neutral gray, or neutral color, 50% gray. Click OK. We get this new layer here. We turn it on and off, and we see it does absolutely nothing, which is what we want it to do. Then I need to select a brush, click here to make sure that I've got my foreground color fully black, my background color fully white, or if I want to do it the other way, is to flip this to switch back and forth. So now with my brush set at 600, 600 pixels, a little bit hard or large, just pull it down a bit, soften it up a bit. The mode is normal. Opacity, I'm going to run this down to about 20%. Now I'm going to start painting in dodging and burning. So what I want to do is I want to increase the contrast in this jawline. So to do that, whoops, I need to switch this to black. So increase the contrast in the jawline. If I turn that on and off, increased her jaw. Want to increase her cheeks a little bit. Just type it, put a little in there. Her eyes, I want a little bit more punch. So what this does is this darkens around the eyes, but the whites of the eyes don't get darkened because they're so much whiter. This only works in the midtones, as it doesn't darken the blacks or doesn't whiten the whites. It works mostly in the midtones. I want to do a little bit through her lips. So to see what I've done, darkened up a little bit. Okay, I want to lighten up her hair a bit, so I'm going to increase my brush size. I'm going to switch here to the white. And then popping the hair up. Again, this is what I've done. Now I want to vignette the around the edges of the picture. So I switch it back to black and I start just painting in. I want more opacity. I want it to darken a little quicker, so I take this up to about 30. Darken it in. Now how this differs and is more useful than, say, the Lightroom way of adding vignettes is that this I can control it. I want down here a little bit darker, but I don't want to affect her face. So I want the neck. So what I have is, this is without the dodge and burn, and this is with the dodge and burn. It's just a change in contrast to create the effect that I'm after. I do this to 80% of my pictures. So what I want to do is, let's close this, and this is the next one we'll work on. But before we go there, I want to run through again what it is we're doing. Before I do that, is there any questions? What I'd like to do is to share a PowerPoint document. So this is the technique to increase drama or depth in images. So what you do is the steps to create layer. You create a new layer from the layer menu. You name the layer. You set layer to soft light. You set the opacity to 50%. Typing it in is important, and the reason you want to type it in is the sliders go to 49 or 51, and you really need it to be almost exactly 50. Actually, I found that you need it to be exactly 50 to be the most effective for this technique. You set the fill to 50% gray, and then that creates your layer. The layer has to be created from the layer menu. You can't use the shortcuts within the Photoshop layer palette. In the settings to work on the layer, you make the background foreground black and white. You select the brush tool, and you start working at about 20% opacity. You can increase or decrease your opacity to increase and decrease how much black you get each pass. If you want more black or more white per pass. If you want more darkness or more drama, then you can do multiple passes. So every time you do a 20%, it becomes 40, then 60, then 80, then 100%. To get the maximum amount that this technique will give you. So what I'm going to do is go back to Photoshop. And we'll work with this image right now. So this image is a lady whose picture I took, and I did it with an on-camera flash, which means that I don't have a lot of depth into the image. She looks fairly flat. She doesn't have, the image isn't showing the curves that she has. So once again, go into Layer, New Layer, name it, Mode, go to soft light. %, fill with soft light neutral color, 50% gray. Click OK. So now I'm ready to start working. Go to my brush tool. I'll make the tool a little bit smaller. Got my black and my white. Our opacity, I'll go to 20%. Now, one of the things I don't like is I don't see the curves across her thigh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of shadow. And that's created some curve. Same on her back leg. Now, I don't like this arm. It's too far forward in the picture. It's just too bright. So I'm going to decrease it, which pushes it back a little bit, which actually twists her whole body around. Now with the face, I'd like to add a little bit more texturing to her chin. So just put, now that pops a little bit too much in the skin there, so I'm going to undo that. Take my opacity down to 10%. Make my brush a little smaller and just go in under here. Then I want to pop the eyes a bit. Take it up to 20. Now I'd like her lips a little bit brighter, so I'm going to switch to the white, just put a little bit in there. So what I've done so far, so I'll turn it on and off. That's the flat image. This is with the dodge and burn on it. I'd like to do a little bit with this arm as well. A little bit up in here, just to darken around where that shadow comes in. Okay, so that works with her. Now I want to work on the background, go to a much larger brush. Paint in. And since I'm in a hurry, I'll change the opacity to 40%. Bring it down, around. Now, if you notice that if I'm working on this railing, is that it darkens the railing for the mid-tones and the low tones, but it doesn't affect this highlight. If something is all the way white, such as this highlight, this technique does not affect that at all. It affects the mid-tones and darker tones. It can't lighten blacks and it can't darken whites. It only works around the mid-tones area to darken and lighten them. Also, put a little bit on this leg too, just to add some more curve to it. Okay, so this is the finished picture. That's what we started with. So by doing this, we've added drama, depth to the image. Let's close this one. No, I don't want to save the changes. Come back here. Check to see if anybody has any questions. Is everybody okay? Okay, so now I'm going to go to my third example, which is a black and white image. And this is to show that you can use this as well as on glamour images. You can use it on black and white images, landscape images. Again, the same technique is that new layer. Mode is soft light. 50% opacity. Fill with soft light neutral. New name. You don't really have to do the name, but I like doing that so that when I look at my images 6 months to a year from now, I can see what my layers actually do. Go to my brush tool. Make sure I've got the black and white foreground background. Start at about 20% opacity. And what I want to do with this one is I want to darken the ground a bit, especially this area down in here, because it pulls my eye away from all the action that's happening here. So darken the ground. Now I'd like to darken this sign, but as you see, it doesn't darken it with this tool. If I can pull this gray down a little bit, cross back here. I want to see the cowboy's face, so I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. Just put a little bit in there. I want to see this cowboy's face a little bit too. Down there. And to make this cowboy stand out a little bit more, I'm going to darken around him. Maybe pull this stuff back a little bit too. So again, the difference is, that's what we started with, and that's what we end up with. So the flat image, and then with a little bit of work. So that's a quick run through of this technique for creating drama or dodging and burning in Photoshop. So does anyone have any questions? I see that someone else has come in. Unfortunately, they've come in a little late. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll quickly run through again is the steps. So first thing you do is to create a new layer. You use a new layer from the layer menu. You name the layer. You set layer to soft light. This is very critical. You set the opacity to 50%. You type it in. Trying to set it with the slider is difficult to get it right at the 50%. Set fill to 50% gray. And then once you've done that, you can start working on the layer. You make the background foreground black and white. I should redo this slide so it looks a little better. So you make the background foreground black and white. Then you select the brush tool. You start working at about 20% opacity. You use black to paint in the burn. Then you use white to paint in the dodge. And that's it. When you're finished, you can flatten the image if you want, or you can just print it out as is. And that's my presentation for how to use Photoshop Dodge